Well, welcome back to chapter 2 of In Search of Deeper Learning. And we're excited to talk for a few minutes about the progressive frontier project-based learning, or as we all refer to, Dewey High. Harriam is going to start us out today. Harriam, what was your kind of overarching takeaway from this chapter?
So this chapter was interesting because I think it kind of provided a roadmap to some degree for the Real World Academy. It highlights the things that you may want to be looking at as things that you want to adopt, as well as things that you want to be looking out for to avoid. I think it shows you a little bit of both sides of that. And so that was kind of the biggest kind of takeaway for me, in that this is a path.
Stephen, how about you?
Thanks for the setup there. Yeah, I mean, in many ways, I agree with Harriam. I think that as you guys go along through the book, it's going to be pretty clear that of the three kind of big cases that they look at, as they say are kind of indicative of schools that actually achieve deeper learning, Dewey High is closest to what I think everyone's vision of Real World Academy is, or something, not the same, but close to it. But at the same time, Dewey High, which is, if you guys are not aware, it's like a thinly veiled high-tech high, it definitely has a different origin story. And, they talk about this on page 51. They talk about this, visionary leader who was has like a lifetime of experiences that was kind of leading him up to attempting to start like a very different school. They call him Lorenzo Friedman, but I forget the guy's name, but he's like the very well-known head of High Tech High, or founder of High Tech High. This kind of story is not how Real World Academy started. So I think it's maybe a little bit of a reality check for the core teaching team, because you guys are the origin story, right? You guys are this first leading group, and maybe the myth that is told around this school is not going to match up with your guys' myth, but you need to think about what that myth is. I think like, what is it that's going to drive the 10 current teachers to put their line in the sand, or their mark on I don't know what the right metaphor is, make their mark in the design of this school, and then, and shape it, because you're not going to have this, force of nature kind of person.
Boy, you guys lined up. I guess I agree with both of you. How about that for straddling the fence? I was sharing with Harriam and Stephen before we started that in this chapter, it's funny, I used the first page to sort of do a summary notes, and all my notes are action items. Like, okay, we need to get a leader, and we need to get figure out how ninth graders are going to learn in this style when they don't know how to do it. And we need to figure out how we're going to get teachers, and how we're going to keep getting teachers, and very much a roadmappy kind of thing. But then what also struck me was what Stephen said about, it's the cadre of teachers here that are going to need to come around a collective culture, harden that culture, and hold firm to that culture against a system that's going to want to suck them back in. And it doesn't work. And Dewey High had a very strong leader who kind of covered the decks for them. But at Real World, it's these founding teachers that need to say, this is what we're about. This is not what we're about. As usual, I have some really great pullouts and quotes. Anyone who wondered if I was an English lit major now no longer wonders. But there was a piece on page 76 where it lists kind of at the top of the page, it lists things that are really relevant to the school and really important for their success. And the third one is the school's willingness to say no to unaligned goals and priorities in the interest of maintaining in all of its actions the necessary coherence, alignment, and collective identity. So at Real World Academy, I kind of wonder, like, what are we going to say no to? What are you going to say that doesn't fit? That doesn't fit. And before I turn it back to the other folks, I'll say on 86, the top of 86, there was another quote that really lined up with that for me, where, and this is one that I shared, like, school boards will get the jitters over this one, but it talks about how Dewey High views that any attempt to reorganize their work around a guarantee of baseline academic achievement will undermine their school's core commitments. So again, what are you about and what are you not about? And even as tensions come in and efforts outside, external efforts want to pull you somewhere, is that where you want to go as a school? Or, and maybe, because one thing at Dewey High too is they've learned is that they got to change. They had to make adjustments. They had to change. They learned, it's a learning organization. So it's not stuck in the mud, but is your core commitment, can you hold to that?
Yeah. I just have to say, like, how I feel like a bad English student because I didn't mark any of those things on page 76. Those three things right there, because you mentioned the third one, the school's willingness to say no. The second one I think is possibly my biggest takeaway from this entire book, which is all about symmetry. The symmetry of how teachers are treated by the administrators, or how the administrators treat the teachers, and how the teachers treat the students, and how everyone is just mirroring, right? Like, if you want your students to be collaborative and interdisciplinary and passionate and have applied knowledge, guess what you all have to do, right? Guess what the teachers have to do, right? And guess what the administrators have to do? If they want the students to fail and experiment and persevere and iterate, teachers are going to need to be given those same freedoms. But I got to say, though, I think that the coming back to this idea of like the grammar, right? I know I'm going to like harp on this, I guess, today. The grammar of schooling. Could you imagine any public school, like in your own experience, to your point, Phil, about this, like, any attempt to reorganize around a guarantee of baseline academic achievement would undermine the school's core commitments? That's a little like saying, could you imagine a school saying, under no condition will we have desks? We will have no desks in this school. That's how powerful this school culture is, because they're going to look at the norm, the most normal norm, and say, we're not going to do it. And that, that's a lot of.
It's not that they're not going to take the test. It's not that they're not going to test their kids. It's that they're not going to reorganize everything they do around measuring that, which gets to, thank you for teeing me up for the softball for page 94, Campbell's Law, which is a takeaway that I have totally used multiple times to trade this book. In the middle of the page on 94, Campbell's Law, which states, whenever an indicator is emphasized, that indicator will become corrupted because people will seek to improve it rather than to address the underlying problem. So if test scores are your problem, that's what you address, rather than how are kids learning to be, and how is that shown as indicative of test scores? And we talked about attendance, like you can game an attendance system to improve your attendance scores, but are you really solving why kids aren't coming to a full day of school? And we use the example of going to college. There's a district high school that for the second year in a row, I know a decent sized high school said 100% of its kids have been admitted to college, community college or 4-year. Is that the end goal? Because when I asked them why, their answer was because that's the goal. And you kind of wonder how many of those kids finish college, how many of those kids. Now, it's not a bad thing to have happen, but that's the measurement. And they've reorganized their entire structure to reach that goal. So what is the goal at Real World Academy? And what is the thing? Is it, when, and as a group, the teachers as the founders have to come around and hold firm to that, because there will be many, many things pulling you away from that.
And that gets to the concept of belief systems and creating belief systems. So when you talk about how the school will feel about failure. So on page 70, they talk about normalizing failure. And students will need to see teachers failing too. All of the things that we want for our students, we're going to have to be transparent about those same things happening to the teachers and staff. That's a really tough place. But, my wife being a scientist, they spent a lot of time talking about the great advances in science come from failure. You learn from failure. But our system is set up that somehow failure is bad.
You're making me
is our
think.
belief system going to be flipping that? or not.
Hiram, you gave me the giggles because I picture a teacher saying, make sure you show your work. And I want Real World Academy kids to go, you show me your work. Why these questions? Why did you choose these dumb questions on this?
Yep.
And if the teacher can't articulate and have shown why,
Mm-hmm.
students shouldn't have to show why. Right? Okay, we all failed. Let's start over. Let's do this differently. What are you trying to do?
And I got to say, this is making me think of the workshop, and I forget whose group it was, because I think that one of the groups prototyped something like a hall of, it wasn't a hall of failure. Maybe it was a hall of failure. It was something where it was like, prototyping a display of some kind that showed like the process that people went through to get to a goal. Because, and I think that this is the really tricky thing about Campbell's law, because Campbell's law says, whenever a social indicator is emphasized, it will become corrupted. So the question is not how do you not have social indicators, right? How do you not have some sort of measurements, but how do you not get sucked into making those things the whole thing?
Yeah.
How do you just, that's a test, it's one tool, or that's a number, it's just one number. How do you resist making those things everything? Because someone's going to want to know numbers, right? You're going to have them. You're going to have measurements and standardization of some kind, but how do you not make those things take over?
And I think that's what Dewey High found out, is that they had to engage in that a little bit, but they found a way to engage in it where it was within their framework. They brought it into their framework and posited it into their framework rather than changing everything to be to meet the state test, basically.
Right. Well, and as Hariam said, if you have a school culture that's strong enough, you can do it, right? If people all believe in a certain set of values and those values don't put tests or attendance rates or graduation rate, whatever it is at the top, but they say, no, we have a much richer understanding of what success is. Yeah, it's not a problem.
I have been present when teachers have cried when test scores were released because they worked so hard for so long to raise test scores. And all I want to share with them was there is so much into those test scores that is outside your control that you might as well cry about the weather. Do what you can. So I think, again, what are we about at Real World Academy? What do they want to accomplish? And how do you put your energy into that? And how do you make sure you can say no to the stuff that doesn't support that? Oh man, it's another brief session, but we hope that you'll respond. We hope that you'll give us your thoughts. We were eager to watch your videos and respond back to you when you give us yours. So please engage, and we'll keep putting these up with 2 a week, and look forward to having some asynchronous interactivity with all of you. Thank you very much again.